Hello and welcome. I'm honored to be the IEEE Awards Board Chair, and we're here today to celebrate the 2022 IEEE Theodore W. Hissey Outstanding Young Professional Award, sponsored by the IEEE Photonics Society, IEEE Power and Energy Society, and the IEEE Young Professionals Committee to Dr. Edhem Custovic. Eddie, congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure, a real honor to be receiving this award after someone that I greatly admire, Ted Hissey, who's been a great mentor and someone that we all look up to.
Thank you. And joining us here today is Imre. Imre, want to introduce yourself?
Yep, thanks. And my name is Emre. I'm the IEEE YP Committee Chair this year. So actually, we worked together with Edhem back in the Young Professional Committee as well. So it's great to have here Edhem getting this award. And I want to second Edhem on that one. Ted has been instrumental. He supported young professionals in IEEE greatly. And it's great to have this award on his name, and Edhem, a person that really deserves it, getting this award. So congratulations again, Edhem.
Thank you so much.
So Edhem, we have to start out by talking about what you got this award for. So, you are a brilliant engineer. We're going to talk about all the different roles that you have, but the one I want to talk about right now is the one that you won this award for, which is for your social impact that you've made through your diaspora industry mentoring program. Can you talk a little bit about even what this is and what got you into it and why it's such an important problem to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think mentoring is something that we all understand, the concept of how mentoring works, but I think a lot of us underestimate the power of mentoring and the way it can bridge the gap in terms of knowledge and confidence and our ability to see the world the way others see it. So for me, IEEE as an organization opened my eyes up to the possibilities that exist, not only within the organization, but within the culture of the organization that can be passed on to other spheres of our society. I was born in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I left Bosnia and Herzegovina as a refugee with my parents a long time ago. And looking back on my journey in terms of where I lived and what I did and the struggles that we had in life, I realized that would have been so much easier had I had really good mentors around me when I was much younger. Then coming into IEEE, the endless resources that are available to you, the individuals that you're surrounded by, you almost find it a bit overwhelming when you're sitting next to individuals that are running some of the largest companies, they're deans of the biggest faculties, places that you've always admired growing up, and here these people are sitting next to you and putting out a hand, wanting to help you. So with that mindset and that sort of inspiration, I always thought about, okay, how can I take what IEEE is very good at doing and put it into the spheres where perhaps IEEE's influence is not as large? And that's when I thought about the mentorship being extended to individuals in countries where IEEE membership may not be as large, but the core principles of what IEEE stands for are very much applicable to that environment. And hence you mentioned, mentoring programs. My brother and I founded a foundation back in our birth country in Bosnia and Herzegovina called Bosnia and Herzegovina Futures Foundation. Many of the principles in the foundation of how we operate are based upon IEEE's mode of operation. I won't go into the details of it all, but I think if you're an IEEE member, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we set up large mentorship programs, and we focused specifically on diaspora. So these are individuals from Bosnia and Herzegovina that now live in about 35, 36 countries around the world. Almost 50% of our population in Bosnia lives outside of Bosnia as a result of the tragic war in the 90s. So we thought about turning this brain drain or this exodus of the population into something that can be beneficial. And when we think about 2 million people that have built their lives in other countries, we have to remember there are people there that have PhDs, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, they're running companies, they're innovators, they're lawyers, they're doctors, and you name it, they've done it. And with all of my traveling with IEEE as well, I had the pleasure of meeting some of these individuals, and some of them are IEEE members, which again made it even easier to access. And we came up with a program to access that knowledge, that core knowledge, and transfer that knowledge to young people in Bosnia and Herzegovina as a means of empowering them and giving them the opportunities to be the best version of themselves. And that has had a huge impact, not only in terms of their skills and how they think, but also about how they perceive the environment around them, how they think about solving problems, how they understand that engineers are not just engineers that sit in their technical domains solving problems, that we have a responsibility to be leaders in our society, to solve societal problems as much as we do technical problems, because that engineering mindset is incredible, and we can achieve a lot of things if we understand that we have a much bigger role to play. So it's been a real pleasure setting that up, working with individuals from many countries and getting to know other cultures through the sphere of this diaspora connection. So hopefully, Karen, that gives you a little bit of an insight in terms of what we set up.
That's great. Now, so, now you're doing the social impact, but you're also doing many other things technically. So tell me about, most folks we just talked about go from, college, go straight into your PhD, go straight out to work. You had a little detour there. Tell us about your detour. You didn't go straight into that PhD program. What did you do?
Yeah, you're right, Karen. I think my career is a little bit strange, and people always sort of look at my career and say, okay, well, there's the technical, there's the social, there's all this other stuff in between. And I'm sure you're in a similar position as well as Emre and other IEEE volunteers. We tend to get involved in lots of things that interest us. And before you know it, your career is deviating a little bit. So I did complete an electronics engineering degree, and I did intend to be a hardcore engineer, just like everyone else around me. But life threw a little spanner in the works for me in a positive sense, that we had a program that was on offer. It was designed to help students become more commercially minded. There was an accelerated master's degree, entrepreneurship innovation, to basically help future researchers or current researchers understand that there's this deep world of non-technical out there, and that we need to understand it, that we need to learn how to thrive in it, and we need to learn how to communicate with it before anything else. And so I really enjoyed that. It opened up my eyes to the world of non-technical engineering and understanding how we translate the deep technical innovation into things that people understand, the things that people want to use, that end user experience, the marketing, the communications around it, understanding stakeholders, all of that stuff that we have to learn, but we're never taught at the undergraduate level. And that helped me also take that mindset into my research, into my social work, but also as a faculty member at La Trobe University, it allowed me to think about how we inject that innovation entrepreneurship mindset at the undergraduate level as a core structure. So that has been sensational, because we now like to say that we graduate undergraduates who have a commercial mindset, or at least understand how the enterprise world works. And for me, I think it's been very, very rewarding knowing that we can drive engineers in the direction that they're expected to lead and commercialize technologies and help develop economies along the way as well. Because let's face it, we're normally at the back end of developing economies. We're not always credited as engineers in how much economic development we've played a role in, because the technology that we tend to design in a lab goes through numerous other phases before it ends up in the hands of someone. And we're not normally awarded for that. But unfortunately, the world is changing. Fortunately, the world is changing, and engineers are becoming much more than just, deep technical experts. We are now problem solvers across multiple facets of life.
And you mentioned another thing about, everybody thinks of us as one-dimensional engineers, and even in academia, professors have traditionally just been, I teach this technical field, and if that's somebody's own experience and they don't have a diversity of other different perspectives, how do we expect them to be able to motivate the next generation to do anything any different? So, we need more young folks and professors like yourself out there changing this. And you hit the nail on the head, because we could be developing the best technology in the world. If we don't know how to communicate it and translate it and transform it into something that people can use and explain how this stuff works, this is something that I think that all institutions are struggling with. And everybody understands this young generation, they all want to be entrepreneurs. They don't want to wait and go work for big companies, and they're not staying with the same companies for 25, 30 years anymore. They move, and they want to move fast. So we either have to move with them and do that mentorship, or we're going to be left behind. So,
I think you're absolutely right. And there's an opportunity here. I always say to the faculties, faculties are very traditional in terms of how we approach teaching, research, etc., etc. We know what the winning formula is, so we just continue down that path. And when you're winning, you don't want to change. But when you're losing, you start to think about, okay, well, what can we do differently? Unfortunately, not many of us tend to recognize when we're losing or when we're heading down a path that's not really being super productive. I think young people think differently. They solve problems differently. And I'm not saying that young people know how to do everything and the senior experts don't know how to do certain things that young people do. It has to be a collaboration. It's now multiple generations that have to collaborate. We have to understand the end user experience is completely different for an 18-year-old to what it is for a 35-year-old or 50-year-old. I mean, I look at my students now at the faculty level, and I understand that I'm now a complete generation out of scope with what they do. And I always tended to think of myself as, as a young faculty member, and I'm turning 38 this month. But yeah, it's now really becoming clear to me that there's a big gap in terms of how they think and learn and do things. So I constantly have conversations really over a cup of coffee to understand how they're approaching things, what's impacting their way of life, what do they want to do, what's creating those difficulties. So all I want to say is that we all have to communicate to each other. Communication is the key to understanding not only what humanity wants, what we want as well, and expressing that and not hiding behind our positions and titles and being out of reach for young people. So I really appreciate the fact that IEEE makes that abundantly clear that it doesn't matter whether you're a director of a company, whether you're a young professional in a local society in a town or a city in Africa, you have access to these people and you can communicate and you can build that community that you've always envisaged, where you're looked at as an individual who has the same level of respect as everyone else. So IEEE is a great home for that.
Awesome.
Actually, it's great that we are talking about mentoring, because now in the IEEE Young Professionals, we are trying to implement the IEEE micro mentoring initiative and a program. Me and some of the YP reps from before, we were trying to implement young professional mentoring sessions in our conferences. And now we try to advance it to all around in all the societies and all the regions and make a full program to enable it. And I know Eddie has been very active in the Young Professional Committee as well. And maybe you can tell us about what you did for Young Professional Committee and young people in IEEE overall, Eddie. That can also help our members listening to see what they can do in the future in part of the volunteering.
Of course. Well, I just want to say well done for pushing that. I think that mentorship part is something that IEEE has been doing informally for a long time. But I think the formalization of those programs, whether it's micro or macro type mentoring, is going to really have a huge impact. And it's a draw card for membership. I mean, when you think about what attracts members, we know what attracts senior members when they're publishing papers and the communities and the conferences. But young people have a complete different perspective in terms of value, and mentorship is probably, I'd say, the most valuable thing that IEEE can offer. So Emre, good on you for pushing that as well. Over the years, I have been part of the Young Professionals Executive Committee in the past. I actually ran our what used to be called Gold Rush, and then the Young Professionals Impact publication, where we tried to bring certain stories of young professionals who have gone on to do some incredible things, inspire individuals. We interviewed a lot of people as a means of showing, look, you can also be one of these individuals by following certain pathways. And the global scene that we have, the membership that we have from all of these countries, 180 plus countries, there's always that common thread. We're there because we have something in common, and that brings us together. So for me, it was important to be able to meet some of these individuals, to understand how they think, to be able to better understand how we can serve them. So serving the IEEE membership means that you have to engage with it, not run it from, traditional corporate style management, ivory tower, and from here we beam down all this knowledge and you all have to absorb it. Culturally we're different, so you have to understand how we learn amongst all of that. So I really enjoyed doing that with the IEEE. We set up very recently an entrepreneurship program that's really, really successful, Innovation Nation. So that was something that we conjured up over a long time in IEEE. We launched it.
You have to be young to be in it. Do you have to be a young professional to be in it? Can anybody join?
No, you don't. That's a great question, Karen, because we focused it on young people specifically because we thought that's where we get the most attention. But we have had a lot of interest from senior engineers asking, hey, is there something like this for us? And I talked about the IEEE mini MBA recently that was being run in conjunction with Rutgers Business School. You know, that commercial training and that mindset is something that I think we all deep down want to get a little bit of knowledge around, and we need to do more to expose it. But in IEEE Innovation Nation, we focused on countries that we believe could benefit the most from IEEE's resources. And they were countries that had a low GDP per capita, low GDP overall, high youth unemployment. As we know, these countries tend to focus a lot of their services on public services, where the government's paying for those jobs, and the government obviously can't, employ the entire country. So rather than waiting for jobs, we thought about how can we create jobs? And that's a long-term process. You need to implant that mindset into young people to think about seeking opportunity, understanding where the gaps are, understanding where young people can make contributions to. And that's what gave birth to IEEE Innovation Nation that's now being run in multiple countries. It started off as a very small pilot program in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We've now run it for 5 or 6 years in different formats. It now runs in Sri Lanka, it's running in Malaysia, it's running in other parts of the world. And it's been very successful in creating a young community of entrepreneurially minded IEEE members. And we know that IEEE has a lot of founders, a lot of innovators, but creating that common thread and saying, guys, you have a lot more in common than you think, but you haven't really explored, your profiles beyond I am in photonics, or I am in power engineering, or I am in whatever else communications you might be. There's a common thread there. We're innovators. We're thinking about, radical solutions. How can we work together to inspire these young people to do that at a local economy level and directly drive economic benefit to that country? And I always think that in 10 years' time, if we can look back and say, hey, 5 mega founders out of these countries that most people don't associate with innovation have now led, huge companies, and IEEE played a small part in inspiring them and provided them basic resources to go down there. I think that would be a game changer for me personally, and I'm sure as many IEEE members in the world.
Maybe I can mention a bit more about the micro-mentoring, why we call it micro-mentoring for the audience that are not aware. So when we start these mentoring programs, and Eddie might have faced sometimes, like we want to have so many mentors, and IEEE, actually that's our power, right? We have so many experienced people, but usually they're also busy. So sometimes they worry, okay, I will commit to this mentoring program, but how much time it will take from me?
Oops.
I can continue on for him because I know exactly what he's going to say.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's what we mainly call by micro mentoring. So just make that connection and also specify it. Like you can do mentoring from any area, whereas we have societies and home societies in IEEE. And that's also how it helps to more specifically, directly in your area, finding the mentor. And that can definitely help, right, Eddie?
Yeah, absolutely. And I fully agree with you, having spoken to hundreds and hundreds of mentors in programs that we've built in several countries. The biggest problem is time commitment. So many mentors are scared of the fact that they might have to overcommit and they don't want to underdeliver. So the promise of having, short bursts of mentoring, and often that short burst of mentoring, Emre, which you defined as micro mentoring, is actually more than enough. You can create long-term relationships and friendships, and that's great. And we've all had some through IEEE. But just that little burst of information when you're at a sort of crossroads of, defining something in your career, having someone do that for you is incredible. I mean, for me personally in IEEE, having the opportunity to network with IEEE presidents and, people that are leading these divisions of IEEE has really played a big role. And of course, taking into consideration that you couldn't exactly say, let's spend 2 hours every month doing this, as much as many of them would love to. It's just impossible. I mean, Karen, you yourself, you're involved in so many things, and Emre, it's very, very hard for you to find that much time and commit to it regularly. But micro volunteering and micro mentoring, that is something that really we can take full advantage of and really provide critical information in short bursts that can be game changing for young people.
Wow. Wow.
And then I think micro volunteering is another topic Eddie touched, and that's another YP initiator. Actually, now it become the volunteering platform, and it connects to my other question to Eddie. Like, because IEEE, I think we believe volunteering is a benefit. It definitely develops you in many areas. And then now we created volunteering platform for all IEEE members and especially young professionals to be able to find volunteering opportunities and to get engaged. And also we are encouraging all IEEE leaders to post opportunities there as well. And hopefully Eddie and all future young professionals will be there effectively volunteering, helping IEEE to create more volunteers like Eddie and all others.
Wow.
Yeah, Emre, I just want to add to what you just said, because volunteering, I mean, obviously it's a huge part of IEEE. All three of us here on this call are volunteers, have been volunteers for a very long time. And for many young people thinking about volunteering and thinking about the pros and cons of volunteering, I can say that there's no cons to volunteering. It's all pro. The people that you meet, the collegiality that you develop, the leadership skills that you develop, the opportunities that you're given that you wouldn't be given if you were just focusing on a commercially minded, career path, the friendships that you build for life, the people that you have when you travel the world, it's just incredible. But at the core of all of that, we're volunteering for a real cause. And IEEE's tagline, advancing technology for humanity, we well and truly believe in that what we're doing is really pushing slowly. Now, sometimes we don't see that change as quick as we want to, but irrespective, the change is coming because we're pushing, and you've got to push for that change to arrive. And when we're all behind one common cause, irrespective of whether we're in photonics or communications or power or even social change, we have that one common thread. And when you're volunteering your time for a cause like that, I know for me, I feel much more grateful for being part of an organization with such a noble cause. So volunteering is a great way to develop yourself and a great way to give back. It's something that you will develop sooner or later, a sense of giving back to humanity or giving back to your local community if you don't have a sense of understanding what it means to be human, part of this huge population that is trying to do some pretty cool things.
Right. I was going to say, one of the things that when we do so much humanitarian activities, and usually one of the biggest mistakes that people who want to jump into humanitarian activities and make a difference is, as engineers, we think we know the solution. But unless you're in the community talking to the stakeholders who are experiencing the problem, your solution might not fit or be accepted. And that's one of the things that we see quite a bit. But here we're utilizing people on the ground who are sharing the experiences, who live in these communities as our members and students, that really can help inform very robust solutions. So, the volunteer.ieee.org, if those of you out there are interested in this, thank you so much for telling us about that. I think that at this time, what I want to do is I want to switch and talk a little bit about who and what motivated you to even become an engineer.
Very good question, Karen. It has to go back to when I was approximately 5 or 6 years old. As a kid, I was a very naughty boy. I would basically dismantle anything that was mechanical or electrical that I could do without harming myself. Or many times I did harm myself in that process. But my parents and my grandparents will remember, well, maybe fondly, I'm not sure about it now, but looking at how many clocks I dismantled and couldn't put back together. So I always had an inquisitive mindset of trying to dismantle to figure out what's driving that end product, or what is driving what we use on a daily basis to understand. And of course, my knowledge at the time was very minimal, so I couldn't figure things out, but I was always curious about that. And so that curiosity of dismantling and building things, obviously people told me, well, this is driven by this, and I didn't know what that meant. But slowly that curiosity grew to a point where it creates a hunger for knowledge and a thirst for knowing the unknown. And that drove me in that direction. And I have to say, very thankful to my parents and also my grandmother. My grandmother spent a lot of time with me, teaching me mathematics. She was a mathematics professor at the time. And then parents spending a lot of time, telling you about the world, not just in a technical sense, but also about, nature and about biology and about chemistry. Both my parents in the medical field. So I didn't go down the medical pathway purely because the smell of hospitals was something that I came to really dislike when I grew up. And so it was a natural sort of tendency to try and get into engineering because I felt that engineers made a huge impact on the world. And I wanted to be someone that was driving solutions. And that was really the draw card for me going down the path. Why I chose electronics engineering over other electronics degrees, other engineering degrees. Someone said electronics and electrical engineering was the hardest type of engineering. And I thought, why not? I'll challenge myself. But I have to say that Nikola Tesla has been someone that I admired and looked up to for as long as I can remember myself, not only because he comes from the part of the world that I also come from, but also because he was just beyond his time. And I was fascinated by his mindset, but I was also fascinated by the fact that a lot of the things that he thought about, we're still trying to understand today. So that curiosity is, I think, what sparks many engineers' pathways to the career. But today, I think I try to inspire young people to become engineers, not because of that deep technical mindset, but because of the societal good that we can do when we really understand, as you said, Karen, the local communities, when we understand the end user, our solutions take a different shape and form. We start to think differently when we actually get out there. So developing that empathy early on in your career, understanding, the people that we're providing solutions to is critical in becoming a great engineer, no matter which career pathway you're oriented towards.
It's amazing that, most folks that we talk to, as editor-in-chief of the Women in Engineering magazine, doing so much for recruiting women, most women will say, and even myself, my dad or my father, and here you said my grandmother. So it's like, yay, grandma. But that's great, because that's something that young people today still think that, well, it's not a field for women, that engineering is not for everyone. And I think that what you just talked about really shows that, yes, not only is it for everyone, but these are our mentors. We have strong female role models that are our mentors. So that was absolutely astounding. Did you ever, I'm going to ask the biggest one. Did you ever think when you were going along that, once you started, did you have challenges that you're like, what, maybe this electrical engineering thing isn't for me?
Absolutely. And I try to use that in my day-to-day teaching today. So like most undergraduate engineering degrees, the first few years of engineering are really a hurdle. They're a huge hurdle. And I'm not sure why that's been traditionally done that way, because when we go to high schools, and I'm sure many people will understand this when I say it, when we go to high schools and different lower schooling systems, we try to excite people about engineering careers because we need more engineers. We talked about getting more women into engineering. So we sell them the dream of what engineering is and how exciting it is and the solutions that we provide and the people that benefit, et cetera, et cetera. Often we talk about, the space challenges that we have in front of us, sending man to Mars. Many years ago, was sending man to moon. And so these are the things that, humanity is challenged by, and people find very appealing to get into engineering because they want to contribute to that. But when you get into engineering, the first 2 years are very burdensome. A lot of mathematics, a lot of physics, a lot of deep technical, hardcore engineering sort of principles. You don't get to do the project level engineering until much later on. So I started to think about how we can change this when I became a faculty member to make learning more project-based rather than topic-based in terms of how we've done it in the past. Because I know myself, the biggest challenge for me was I found it quite bland and boring that certain academics took the approach of, okay, here's what we're going to learn today. It's a mathematical approach to solving a problem, but let's not talk about the problem. Let's just talk about the theory, why it's important, and very, very dry content. I believe that universities now understand that it's not just about the education, it's about the experience for the students. And that experience can push someone to, yes, I want to be an engineer, or no, I'm going to go and do something different. Not because I didn't have what it takes to be an engineer, but because the experience that you offered me was not what I want to be in. And so that needs to be changing as well as everything else that we do. And it's great to see that IEEE, there's a lot of inspirational faculty members who are doing things differently, that have the resources to do things differently. And to be honest, the environment has changed that we can do things differently. You're encouraged now to think outside of the box, the flipped classrooms, the digital tools, doing things differently that you wouldn't be penalized on, that you probably would have been on many, many years ago, and saying, hold on a second, you're running what? You're not teaching what? And that's our changing. So project-based learning is key to young people really embracing engineering. And for me, that was the biggest challenge as an undergraduate student.
Awesome. Emre, you have any final words for Dr. Eddie? We can't hear you.
I think everyone's on mute.
Yep, let me get on mute. So yeah, no, it was great to hear from Eddie, and I'm happy that I will see Eddie and all the honor ceremony winners in San Diego here. Actually, I'm here also in San Diego doing 5G RFIC design. Very exciting program. We'll learn about 5G and all the new technologies, and then we'll have the honor ceremony. So hopefully, maybe several of you will see, and definitely Eddie and Karen. It will be great to see you both there.
Great.
Looking forward to that. And so you're playing host, Emre, since you're there already, right? You know the city better than anyone else.
Yep, definitely.
So on behalf of all of us again, Dr. Eddie Custovic, congratulations on winning the Young Professionals Ted Hissey Award, Outstanding Young Professional Award. And we look forward to seeing you and celebrating in person this year at our great Vixen Honor Ceremony in San Diego. So thank you, Imre, for being here. And thank you to our sponsors. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for being such an inspirational role model, mentor, and we look forward to seeing great things from you in the future.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Karen.
Karen. If I can just thank a few people before we finish up. We talked about mentorship and people who have inspired us. There are many, many people that have inspired me in IEEE, but I just want to thank a few people personally. Professor Barry Shoup, one of our former IEEE presidents, has been an incredible mentor to me. Dr. Dejan Milojicic, you probably know from the Computer Society and Industry Engagement at IEEE. Karen Bartleson, who really played a big role in empowering young professionals. And of course, Ted Hissey, Theodore Hissey, who's been father, grandfather, and young professional. He always says he's the oldest young professional, but we like to say he's the youngest young professional at heart. So thank you to all of those individuals and all the other ones that have played an important role in my career. Thank you so much. And I look forward to being someone that can inspire others to become great leaders in the future.
Thank you.